Hi, this is Laura. My sister Leslie was a beautiful soul. She was full of peace in all that she did, and she never liked to make waves. She practiced this all her life. She formed her own opinions and could not be swayed by others. She had a great sense of humor, and she loved to laugh. We were 7 years apart, and Kathy and she were 14 years apart. When she would call me on the phone, she would always start the call by saying, "This is your big sis." I can only remember 2 times when she was a little too bossy to me. Mostly, I have very fond memories. One is us coming home from school while living in Oklahoma City, famished, and throwing open the refrigerator door to see what we could find to eat. Inevitably, we would pull out the mayonnaise and pickle jars and make us a sandwich with white bread. We laughed about those sandwiches later in life. In her high school years, when we lived in Atlanta, I remember her beginning to date, playing on a girls' football team called Powder Puff Football, and us dancing to records playing in her room. It was in her late teens when she was called upon to babysit Kathy and I, while Mom and Dad took a trip that they had won to the Bahamas. We were living in Atlanta at that time. What a weekend that was. First, Kathy got sick with a fever. I recall Leslie being on the phone, calling various people to find out what to do to bring the fever down. Next thing I knew, she was running a very cold tub of water, and as she got ready to place Kathy in the water, I started screaming, "What are you doing? You're going to hurt her." But Leslie was very calm and told me it was going to be okay. And it was. Kathy's fever came back to normal. But the weekend continued to be troubling. She ran into my bedroom to tell me that Tiny, our dachshund dog, had escaped. I ran outside, only to see Tiny running through the neighbor's lawn with a dead kitten in his mouth. We finally got Tiny back to the house and banished to the backyard. Then Leslie had to go to the neighbors and explain the fate of their poor little kitten. Leslie handled all these emergencies like a pro, calm and collected. I'm sure no one was more glad than she was when our parents finally arrived home. Leslie and I shared a bedroom in our Grandma Smith's home in Enid, Oklahoma, leading up to the time she was getting married. I had borrowed my grandmother's record player and had saved my money to buy a single record for Leslie. The day of her wedding, she woke up so excited, and I went over to the record player and put on the record, "Going to the chapel and we're gonna get married," by the Dixie Cups. We danced around the room that morning. Leslie was a great mother, a good seamstress, and cook. For many years, she often made our Christmas gifts. I still use placemats that she sewed and a Christmas wreath that she handmade. She loved to bake and used to bring pumpkin bread and hot spiced tea with her when she would visit us at Christmas in Dallas. Speaking of pumpkin bread, when she lived in an apartment in Dallas later in her life, she decided to bake pumpkin bread for all of us. She did such a great job, making it from scratch and loading the loaves in the oven. When she got ready to take them out of the oven, as soon as she opened the oven door, the oven rack came sliding out on its own and the loaves plopped to the floor, destroyed. What a disaster. She had the maintenance people come and look at the oven, but they couldn't figure out how to fix it. But Leslie was not daunted. She went back to the store and bought more ingredients and popped those loaves in the oven. When it came time, she was ready. She had on oven mitts, and as soon as she opened up the oven door, she grabbed the rack and saved the pumpkin bread from sliding to the floor. They were especially delicious that year. It was in Leslie's late 50s that life threw her a nasty curveball. First with thyroid cancer, and then later with a very hard-to-diagnose mood disorder. She suffered for several years before some relief was found through proper medications and diagnosis. Scripture found in 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 18, calls on us, "In everything give thanks." Had there not been a need for more care for Leslie and access to different medical specialties, Leslie's birth family would not have had 10 precious years with her in Dallas. For me, this is where I give thanks, for it was a blessing for Kathy and I to have those close years with her, a blessing that she got that extra time with Mom, and a blessing that she got to see her 2 nieces grow up, and a blessing that we found the right doctor who was able to give her many years of stabilization. Throughout those 10 years, there were some long periods of contentment and purpose. In August 2009, Leslie and I attended Sir Paul McCartney's concert together, a wonderful treat for both of us that provided us many memories we relived together. We shared political ideologies and laughed and cried together. We attended TCU football games, watching our niece Mallory play in the marching band. She attended high school football games and watched our niece Emily play in the marching band. Leslie attended many of my own choir concerts in Fort Worth and traveled with us to New York City to see me perform with my choir in Carnegie Hall. While there, we attended Broadway plays. She was helpful in house sitting for me and taking care of my Boston Terrier dogs when I would travel on vacation. And each July 4th, she, Mom, and I attended the 4th of July Pops concert in Richardson and ate barbecue beforehand. It should come as no surprise to anyone that she always ordered barbecue pork spare ribs and a side order of fried okra. And she loved Mexican food, and we found a favorite near my home that we shared each time she visited. In a letter she wrote me just this past October, as I was leaving on a vacation trip, she instructed me, "Eat some shrimp for me." You see, Leslie and I shared many of the same food cravings. But if you were to ask me what was her favorite food, I would have to say bread. Around 2007, she took on our mom as her project, driving Miss Natalie to and from numerous medical appointments. For the next 5 years, they were a twosome, spending countless hours together, reading the Sunday newspaper, eating lunch together almost daily, driving to the girls' schools to see their plays or activities, or participating in an activity at our mom's home. It was helpful to both of them to be together, and it gave them a lot of joy and solace. And it was very helpful to me that they could help each other out. Throughout all these past 17 years, I learned and came to admire more qualities about Leslie. 1, she was tremendously adaptable. She never complained about her circumstances. She understood limitations and readily became flexible. I think she must have learned this early in life because, you see, she was born during the war when Daddy was serving in the Army. She had no bassinet or crib. Instead, Mom and Dad made a bed for her in a drawer out of the chest of drawers for her to sleep in. 2, she practiced gratitude with her family in big and small ways. When we 3 sisters would go in together for flowers or a special gift or event, she always found a way to slip me a few dollars to cover her share, though it was never expected. She never had to be asked. She just did this on her own. And in the past few years, she colored me pictures and sent them to me. One of them is hanging on a wall in my office. So it should be as no surprise to anyone that she tried her best to do her best, always. And last, she was a natural-born comforter. One day I had a traffic accident, one that I caused, and in my shock and dismay, I went directly to her apartment and sobbed in her arms. She was so gentle and so kind, speaking soothing words to me as I began to gather my wits. She was, plain and simple, my big sis. Leslie, I love you, and I will miss you forever.